I hope that my Wi-Fi is working. I just realized you guys are still seeing these nails. They're so overdue. It's time. It's absolutely time. I'm really sorry that they're still on my hands. But I hope you are well as you possibly can be, given the circumstances of existing right now. I feel like this new moon snuck up on me. Like I didn't even remember the fact that this new moon. It's just because there's been so much going on. Not even just in my life, but like also just like astrologically that I haven't even realized, just the fact that this week was a new moon in Taurus and it's such an important new moon. Hi, thank you for joining. So I wanted to hop in a little bit and talk about what is going on, how to work alongside this moon today. It's exact actually in about an hour, around like 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I pulled some cards in relation to this lunar transit, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what the themes are, how to work alongside it, and yeah, just like what you should journal on or work on in terms of, working alongside this energy. Thank you so much for joining. So today is the new moon in Taurus, darling, which is accompanied by a sun in Taurus. Uranus is also in Taurus. Obviously the moon is in Taurus. And then we have Mercury and Venus in Gemini. So there's a lot of energy going on. Obviously new moons are more about setting intentions than they are releasing. But what I will say is that there's an element to this new moon. I don't know if you guys are feeling heavy at all. Like I woke up and I was like, 20 pounds of weight on my body. Like there's an element of it that is heavier because there is an element of it that is like more full moon energy, which is this idea of releasing and clearing your slate and shedding skin in order to really... To preface this, we're going into a really, really, really intense eclipse season, right? The summer is going to be a summer of a lot of transformation, a lot of change. Eclipses always bring about a lot of like internal and external changes. So we are in the precipice. I don't know if you can feel, aside from the heaviness, yeah, for sure. If you feel like kind of like you're on the verge of not really recognizing life a little bit or experiencing something different than what you have been accustomed to, know that that is very much in alignment with what's going on. Eclipse season is here to shake things up. So this is kind of like the last lunar transit that we have that's sort of in a way like a calm before the storm. So it could feel heavy for a lot of different reasons. One of them being, wherever it's transiting, your like specific chart, maybe like a really prominent theme, but also it's worth noting, especially if you have like a fixed rising, by the way. But also there's this idea, Saturn and Uranus are playing a role that are very, very, very much like, how are you going to make sure that you are taking the aligned action with this life that you want to live, right? We're in a space for a lot of different astrological reasons that I won't even get to, where we are disconnecting from what we've been conditioned to define, our lives by, right? I think we've been really hyper-focused for a long time on career and on living by societal standards. And especially with this Venus and Gemini playing such a role, we've come back to like, how do I define joy? And with all of this Taurus and Venusian energy, hi, thank you for joining. This Venusian energy is reminding us that life and the joy that we experience from life is defined by relationships and social experiments and, exploring and really standing in, the confidence that we were just simply put on this earth to like enjoy yummy fruits and laugh with one another, right? So there's this tug of war between like needing to get stuff done and needing to build a solid foundation for yourself within societal terms, right? So like making sure that you have a well-paying job and making sure that you are, using your time productively. And also we're like combating this idea of like, I just kind of want to run free. So there could be like a tug of war that you're experiencing, but right now is a beautiful, beautiful time with this new moon to set intention on what finding and living within that middle ground looks like. So setting intention of like, okay, I'm not going to define my value by what society deems to be valuable, but I am going to make sure that I am living a life that is to some degree sustainable, that there is a solid foundation for me so that I can have some peace within my own mind, right? So understanding that, sorry, I just got a notification that threw me off a little bit. But yes, essentially, it's this idea of how can I make sure that I'm defining my own peace. Journaling prompt that I shared on the page just now was along the lines of how can I create heaven on earth? And the reason why I thought this was a really important prompt to work with under this transit is because we do have Jupiter moving in the sign of Pisces. She'll be back or he'll be back, but I like she'll be back in Aquarius, I think at the end of the summer. But while she's spending this time in Pisces, it's a beautiful time to utilize the abundance and the good luck that Jupiter will always bring to align it with like, what does it mean for me to live my spiritual truth? And what does it mean for me to create heaven on earth? And the reason why this is very important is because there are a lot of spiritual beliefs that will push you to forfeit joy and to forfeit life and to forfeit creative expression on this earth in order to be guaranteed a beautiful life in the afterlife, in heaven, or whatever you define to be after this physical experience. And so working with Jupiter and Pisces, working with all of this Venusian energy, working with Mercury and Venus and Gemini is like, how can I make sure that whatever I would define heaven as is something that I'm experiencing right now? And that means redefining what success means for you. That means pouring into the relationships that actually nurture you. That means actually making sure that you are making every choice, every movement, and having a clear inner dialogue that supports a life that feels like heaven on earth. So if you do anything with this new moon that is ritualistic in any sort of sense, so what I would, advise you to do or just set an intention for is to script. So scripting is when you write in first person, present tense, sort of expressing gratitude for this reality that you are living in. I would advise you to script a life in which you are living heaven on earth, and whatever heaven on earth means for you. If that means you're living on a farm and you're living a very slow and intentional and present life, go off. If it means that you're in a high rise in LA and you're successful and you're making all of this money, go off. Just make sure that you are living life on your own terms. Now, I will also say that if you're being or trying to be intentional with this new moon in relation to its actual Taurus themes, know that now is a really important time to also get clear on what your dialogue and what your relationship with money is. I'm wearing all green today, especially because it relates to the cards and the heart chakra, but also because I'm embodying money, and that is a really big theme right now. What is your relationship with money? How do you define money? How do you define your worth in relation to money? And do you feel ultimately deserving of it? And knowing that money and currency is something that comes in many different forms, and you can embody that, you can admit that, you can attract that. Taurus is all about enjoying the luxuries of life and knowing that luxuries come in physical form, but they also come in energetic form, right? It's luxurious to enjoy the pleasures of eating and indulging in all of your senses, surrounding yourself with certain colors, certain scents, certain smells, making sure that your physical environment is supportive of like what it means to feel good, right? So making sure that you're living a life in alignment where pleasure is at the forefront. I've said this like so much during every like Taurus transit, but this new moon is especially for me, it's pushing me to be as honest as I possibly can with what experiencing pleasure and feeling deserving of pleasure looks like. And that means creating certain boundaries with things that take away pleasure for me. That means prioritizing time to experience deeper pleasure, and all of those beautiful things. So yeah, I wanted to share the cards that I pulled because they were really powerful, darling. I don't know which ones to start with. I'll start with the Goddess deck because the first one that came up was Rhythm. And this is so in alignment with this energy. It's the Rhythm card. And essentially, this card embodies what it means to dance with life instead of trying to force and control our timelines, right? I feel like sometimes trying to force and control people and circumstances is just, it's a birth of our own fear. We think if things are within our control, we just are less likely to have to suffer. So this card is really calling us to move with life a little bit and to find the joy, not in the things that we can control, but rather the things that we can dance with and indulge in. So, now that we're moving into social spaces again, what does it mean to, dance with the experiences of being surrounded by people that you love, with sharing your art, with sharing your voice, with using your body as a vessel to be the most authentic version of you possible, instead of I want to be this person, or I want this outcome, or I want this career, I want this thing, instead of controlling life or feeling overwhelmed when you can't control life, dancing with what's in front of you in the given moment. And of course, intuition came up. And I think with Jupiter and Pisces right now, the veil is very, very thin when it comes to communication with ancestors, communication with guides on the other side, or whatever the case may be. So know that whatever your intuitive compass is pointing you towards, it's probably a direct line of communication from whatever you define divinity as. So really, dance with life, know that you're guided and protected and loved and cared for, and that combination. But the tarot that I pulled, or rather from my Oracle Tarot deck. I don't know why speaking is so difficult for me. We are also entering Mercury retrograde, which I'll talk about further down the line, but know that that's a thing. But the first one that came up was Choose Wisely. And every time I pull this card, I get so anxious because it makes me feel as if outcome is finite. And I don't believe that. I don't walk in alignment with the fact that one choice is kind of what you embark on. But what I think this is kind of saying right now is this idea that because the veil is so thin and because we are so supported, we're in a space where we've done so much healing and so much work on ourselves that walking in alignment with the truth we've cultivated for ourselves, for this version of ourselves that we've tried so hard to pour into, means making choices and taking action in alignment with this truth that we know of ourselves, right? If you have finally come to a space where you know, I am an artist, or you know, I deserve to stand in my nose, I deserve to honor pleasure, you know what, I am more outgoing than I'm giving myself credit for, whatever the case may be, whatever you've learned about yourself in this period of isolation, in this period of healing, now is the time to make choices that are in alignment with that new truth. It's easy to do all this healing work when you're at home and alone. It's much more difficult to put it into practice when we do reintegrate into life and when we do, put ourselves in situations where we kind of have to like stand in our truth. So know that, whatever choices you're making right now in terms of creative projects or people that you are, allowing yourself to be surrounded by, the words that you're saying to yourself and others, make sure that they're in alignment with what you have known to be true about you, or this new version of yourself, or the most authentic version of yourself that you've come back to. And ultimately, because I'm running out of time, the last two that I pulled were awareness, which in this deck it's called awareness, but in like the traditional tarot, this is a magician card. So this is all about seeing the reality that is that you want for yourself in your mind's eye and creating that. And the heart chakra, which is why I'm wearing all green today, and I'm wearing my heart chakra tee. Green is a really important color right now. If you script with colored pen, I would advise you to use green. But in summation, know that you can manifest the reality it is that you want for yourself, especially under this very potent new moon transit, as long as it is in alignment with heart-centered intention. So know that, this career, this relationship, this life that you want for yourself that you're kind of trying to force out of your reality is only going to manifest if you kind of leave it alone and are just led by heart-centered intention, right? Right, sorry, I paused. So not forcing circumstance, but rather knowing that as long as I am led by my heart and led by my own truth, things will fall into place. I am guided, I am protected. There's some sort of like divine orchestrator that is pouring into me, walking in alignment with this truth that I've cultivated for myself. So I hope that wasn't too convoluted. Mercury's in Gemini, so I'm going to be saying a lot of words this season. But know that this is a really beautiful lunar transit, so definitely script. If you're going to do any sort of ritual, I would advise you to get your journal, get a green pen, and just write out the reality that you want for yourself. And outside of like the circumstance that you want out of life, what do you want to feel? Because, when I was scripting, I was like, I just want to experience pleasure. I want every meal to be present and vibrant. I want to dance every time I hear music. I want to laugh as deeply and as purely and as long as I possibly can with my friends who I love and who pour into me. I want to make sure that I'm, saying yes on the boundaries that I want to upkeep and, no on the things that I don't, just instead of scripting on like specific circumstance, unless you feel called to, script on the feeling that you want life to bring you, that you want life to pour into you. And yeah, it's a beautiful lunar transit. It could feel heavier, but know that this is all because there's a lot of shedding of skin, there's a lot of purging, and whenever that happens, we tend to feel it rather viscerally. But I am sending you all my love and all my support. And yeah, there's so much. We're moving into a crazy, crazy season, eclipse season, Mercury retrograde. So I'll be here to guide you as much as I possibly can if I'm not drowning in it as well. But the planets are always working for you, never against you. And this is a beautiful time to really feel empowered in self. So I'm sending you all my love. And yeah, that's all. Have a good new moon, guys.